Hello everybody and welcome back for some weekly VR news. As always, I am Mateo311 and this is your channel for everything VR related. So again, it's business as usual. We have a couple games releasing, some cool announcements, but what I really want to get into is the fact that all the recent rumors have basically been confirmed. And 95% of them are really good news. I'd say the only bad thing is Astro Bot not being a VR title, but we'll get into all of that. There are of course links and timestamps if you want to skip ahead, but before we jump in, this video is brought to you by my sponsor, Kiwi Design. Kiwi has accessories for all of your favorite headsets, and they finally started releasing some new products for the Quest 3. On screen we have their brand new extra comfy Quest 3 Elite strap. I've been using head straps from Kiwi for years now, and they're hands down my favorite. There's a link to Kiwi down in the description, and don't forget to use discount code Mateo311 for 5% off and to help support my channel. Okay, so let's start this video off like normal with the check-in, and that's what have I been up to in the VR world. Now, if you guys follow this channel, you know that I recently got a puppy. He's been taking up a lot of my time. He's been in a bunch of videos. He's out cold right now from being outside all day. He's exhausted, so no Cosmo in this video, but he is definitely cutting into my VR time. However, I just want to tell a quick story before we move on to today's main news, and that's the fact that I made a friend in the gym and we started talking about video games in VR, and he got interested, and I was like, you know what? Why don't you come over and I'll give you a tour of VR. So I had this guy come over, gave him like an hour plus long tour of VR, and now he's off to get a Quest 3. And I gotta say, guys, this is the best way to get people into VR. Flat screen trailers will never do it. They just can't understand what it's like. So you throw people in, don't go crazy. I threw him in the Space Pirate Trainer, instantly got into it. Like, that is just such a game that's so easy to get into, so immersive, so fun. He wanted to kick it up a notch. We tried some Population 1, which was slightly overwhelming for him. Surprisingly, the free locomotion did not make him nauseous, but it was just so many mechanics at once. With no previous VR knowledge, it was a little hard for him to get into, but he definitely loved it. He loved the shooting aspect. So he is sold, and I'm just proud of myself because I got one more person in the VR. But let's move on to today's news because I am really digressing here. So in new releases, let's start off with Taiko Frenzy, a game that's already available and I missed its release last week. This is a rhythm-style drumming game that takes place in a beautiful cartoon-style world, featuring 4 distinct difficulty levels to help you learn at your own pace, a large array of unlockable skins, plus the ability to create custom songs. Now, as of making this video, the game only has roughly 35 reviews, but the vast majority of gamers are giving this title 5 stars. So if you're looking for a new rhythm-style game, you might want to check this one out. Now, moving into titles releasing this week, there's not much to report on. The world's deadliest game of Operation, where you have to stake vampires, Silent Slayer, Vault of the Vampire, is releasing this week, but I've mentioned this title about 100 times now, so I'm sure you're familiar with it. I also released a sneak peek gameplay video, and I'll also have a full review up later this week, so I'm really not going to spend much time on this title, and just move on to our next release, which is Journey to Foundation, finally making its way onto PC VR. This is a story-driven action-adventure sci-fi title based on the books of Isaac Asimov. I originally played through this game on the Meta Quest and definitely enjoyed it, but it really could have used better graphics to help immerse you in that beautiful sci-fi world. It's not your typical straight shooter title. You could guide the storyline with a bunch of different narrative choices, and you'll also acquire some cool mental abilities. So if you're a fan of Isaac Asimov, or you're just looking for a story-driven shooter, I recommend you go check this game out. Now, unfortunately, that's all the new releases I have on my list for this week, but there are some cool game updates coming, starting with a new Horde map for Arizona Sunshine 2. This co-op zombie shooter is dropping you into the old mines in its latest new free map. If you're not familiar with Horde mode, it's just endless waves of more and more zombies where you compete for the high score. Overall, it's some mindless fun, so if you enjoy this game, go jump back into it. Now, the next update is near and dear to my heart, and that's the Quest 3 texture pack upgrade for Asgard's Wrath 2. This not only includes 8 gigs of enhanced visuals, but they've also introduced both fidelity and performance modes. This is similar to what you normally see on current generation consoles, and in fidelity mode, the game runs at 72 frames per second and tries to give you the highest visual quality, whereas performance mode aims for a steady 90 frames per second. Now, there's actually a bunch more features in this update, but I want to spend a minute on those quality options. This is something that I hear people talk about a lot because they use the Quest optimizer, just how much better games can actually look. You got to try the optimizer, it's amazing. Personally, I enjoy the higher frames per second. Something about it makes the game feel more real to me, but I understand when a game looks good, it is extremely immersive. So pushing the graphics to the max, yeah, I totally get it. So the fact that we now have that option, yeah, that should be standard in games. Forget the Quest optimizer, developers should do this. Get a solid 72 frames per second, highest visuals, and then go for 90 with a little bit decreased visuals. That would be a great option. Unfortunately though, I know that puts more burden on developers. It's probably not worth it. They just want to give people the best overall experience. But the fact that a high quality game gives us that option, top notch. One more reason to love Asgard's Wrath 2. But let's move into our next update. The jack of all trades shooter Guardians Frontline has just introduced the Queen update. Now, if you're not familiar with this title, it's like Halo meets Starship Troopers with a dose of real-time strategy and tower defense. It's playable in both PvP and PvE. There's a huge array of content and unlockables, and the latest update is putting us against a brand new foe, a gigantic bug queen. But now let's move into today's main stories, starting with an update for the PlayStation VR2 and some rumors that were recently confirmed. Now, starting with the PlayStation VR2, Sony previously mentioned that they were looking into PC VR support, and people who were familiar with the hardware said, well, we're most likely going to need an adapter if it's going to work natively with PC VR, and it looks like that's what's coming because they're currently certifying their own adapter. There's no information on pricing and how it fully works yet, but it looks like we are definitely getting PC VR support natively in the near future. Now, a ton of people are excited for this because this would be the lowest priced native PC VR headset with some really incredible specs. It's not top of the line. There are some other headsets that are, have a better FOV or have a higher resolution, but what the PlayStation VR2 offers up is extremely solid, and it will make for a great PC VR headset. I'll see if I'm going to switch to it. I'm getting used to wireless. Like previously, wireless never bothered me. I'm like, yeah, it's all right. I don't mind trading the cable for the much higher end fidelity. But we'll see. I'll do a comparison with my Quest Pro, which I've been using for PC VR lately, my Quest 3, and of course the PlayStation VR2 when the adapter is available. Now, I know plenty of people who feel that Sony supporting PC VR with the PlayStation VR2 is like them throwing in the towel, waving the white flag. That's it. They're officially giving up, especially after it was confirmed that the latest Astro Bot will not be a VR title. But I actually have a little bit of a different view. And I know that I've been very tough on Sony and the PlayStation VR2, but it has nothing to do with resentment or, being a meta shill or a PC VR elitist. It all comes down to having access to meta information, specific data, sales, stuff like that, and knowing that it's just not profitable enough for them to put any more effort into. They're not going to make exclusive titles because they'll never make their money back, and they really don't have a path to grow it to compete with something like Meta. Unfortunately, it's just not going to happen. And that's where my frustration and disappointment comes from. It's not resentment. I don't hate the PlayStation. I actually think it did a lot right. However, moving on from that, if they decide we're going to support PC VR, there is a potential avenue for releasing games to more people than just PlayStation. You're basically more than doubling your potential market. So them working with Steam a little bit, there is an avenue for some bigger games. We're not going to get AAA VR titles. I'm sorry, it's not happening, but it does open things up a bit. And ultimately, I think it's a positive. I wanted them to have PC support from the very beginning. So I consider this a huge plus. The future of the PlayStation VR2 is still a little rocky, but overall, great to have a native PC VR headset with all the specs that the PlayStation VR2 brings. But moving on to the next headset, it looks like the Meta Quest 3S was actually just recently confirmed. The fitness title Allo Moves XR previously listed Meta Quest 3S as one of the supported headsets. Now, you might want to write that off as just a screw up from the developers, but this title is actually published directly from Meta. So it looks like they officially leaked the name of their upcoming headset. Now, overall, this still doesn't say much. Meta has confirmed a new headset is coming this year. The speculation is that this is a cheaper headset. It's to get people into the Quest 3 ecosystem at a lower price than $500, which is pretty high to ask the average person for. If you get it closer to $400 or $300 and you could still support all the latest games, that would be ideal. That's the expectation. We're not sure. That's not confirmed. But this might mean, hey, we're getting a little bit closer to the release and maybe we'll hear some new information soon. I hope that's the case. I don't know anything for sure just yet. Okay, That was today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. And as always, I'll see you guys on next time.